You are not flying with us, Tiana. My brother-in-law Brad sneered as he ripped the boarding pass from my hand and tore it into two distinct pieces right in front of the gate agent. The sound of the paper tearing felt louder than the airport announcements echoing through JFK Terminal 4. My mother, Beatrice, did not even look at me. She was too busy adjusting her silk scarf and checking her reflection in the glass, ensuring her appearance was perfect for the first-class lounge. "You canceled my ticket," I whispered, my voice trembling as the reality set in. "We needed the miles to upgrade, LaToya." And Mom, Brad said with a casual shrug that made my blood boil. "It is a business expense, Tiana. You understand business, don't you?" "Oh wait, you fix old purses for a living. You probably don't." I looked at my sister LaToya. She was already filming a selfie video holding up her champagne flute pass, pretending she had not just watched her older sister get stranded. "Mom, please," I said, reaching for her arm. "I have no money on me. You guys drove me here. How am I supposed to get home?" "Figure it out," my mother snapped, pulling her arm away as if my touch would stain her designer jacket. "You are 29 years old, Tiana. Stop acting like a charity case. It is embarrassing." They turned their backs on me. I watched them walk down the jet bridge, my mother, my sister, and the man who had hijacked our family finances, laughing as they boarded a flight to Paris that I had partially paid for. I stood there alone at gate 24 with no luggage, no ticket, and as I reached into my pocket, I realized with a sick lurch of my stomach, no passport. Brad still had it. I felt my knees give way. I was going to crumble right there on the dirty airport carpet. But before I could hit the floor, a hand steadied me. It was firm, warm, and attached to a man wearing a suit that cost more than my entire car. He leaned in close, his cologne smelling of oud and cold, hard cash. "Do not cry," he murmured, his voice low and dangerous. "Act like you are with me. My car is on the way, and trust me, those three are going to regret the day they learn to spell the word Paris. My name is Tiana, and I am a luxury authenticator. My family thinks I play with trash, but I hold the keys to the closets of the top 1%. Before I tell you how a billionaire and I turned my family's dream vacation into a living nightmare, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you. To understand why I was left standing at an airport gate with nothing but the clothes on my back, you have to understand what happened 30 minutes earlier at the check-in counter. It was supposed to be a family trip, a celebration of my mother's 60th birthday. We were all going to Paris. I had saved for 6 months to buy my economy ticket, while Brad, my sister, LaToya's husband, insisted he was treating everyone else to business class because his investments were paying off. We were standing in the priority line because Brad insisted we belong there, even though my ticket was coach. The check-in agent, a weary woman who looked like she had seen it all, asked for my credit card for the baggage fees. I handed her my card, the one I used for everything. She swiped it. She frowned. She swiped it again. "Miss declined," she said loud enough for the people in the line behind us to hear. "That is impossible," I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "I just paid it off yesterday." "Try it again, please." Brad chuckled, a low, condensing sound that grated on my nerves. "I told you, Tiana, you need to be more careful with your spending. Buying all those old scraps of leather to play with is draining you dry." He was talking about my job. I source, authenticate, and restore vintage luxury handbags. To them, I was a glorified cobbler. To my clients, I was a miracle worker who could bring a $40,000 Birkin back from the dead. I did not spend anything I said pulling up my banking app. But when I logged in, my balance was zero. Frozen. My eyes darted to Brad. He was the one who had set up the family banking plan years ago, saying it was better for tax purposes if we pooled resources. I had trusted him. "You locked my card, didn't you?" I accused him, my voice rising. "Keep your voice down, Beatrice," my mother hissed. She was looking around nervously, terrified that someone from her church group might see us. "You are making a scene, Tiana." "As usual." "He locked my card, Mom," I said, showing her the screen. He drained my account. Brad sighed, adjusting his cuffs. I moved some assets around for the trip, Tiana. It is called liquidity. You would not understand. I needed to secure the deposit for the villa in Provence. You will get it back when we return. Stop being so dramatic. Dramatic? I laughed, a harsh sound that made Latoya look up from her phone. She was currently live streaming to her 12,000 followers, most of whom were bots Brad had bought for her. Hey guys, we are at the airport. Latoya chirped into her screen, ignoring the fact that her sister was being financially gutted 3 feet away. Paris vibes only, no bad energy allowed. I looked at them. My mother posing for Latoya's camera, Brad looking smug, and me, the one who actually worked 80 hours a week, broke. I am not going, I said firmly. If I cannot pay for my bag, I am not going. And I want my money back, Brad, now. Beatrice stepped in then. She did not ask Brad why he took my money. She did not ask Latoya to stop filming. She turned on me, the scapegoat she had spent 29 years perfecting. You are ruining this, my mother said, her voice dripping with venom. This is my birthday trip. Brad is doing his best to give us a luxury experience, something you know nothing about, because you are too busy digging through dumpsters for old purses. You are selfish, Tiana. You have always been selfish. It was the same old song. Latoya was the golden child, the influencer, the star. I was the worker bee, the one who paid the bills in the background while they pretended to be rich. But I was done. Give me my passport, Brad, I said, holding out my hand. I am going home. Brad looked at my passport, which he was holding along with everyone else's. He tapped it against his chin thoughtfully. You know, Tiana, your mother is right. You are bringing the vibe down. We need this trip to be perfect. He handed the agent 3 passports. His, Latoya's, and my mother's. Then he looked at the agent and said, We need to upgrade these 3 to first class. Use the credit from the 4th ticket. The agent looked confused. Sir, I cannot just void her ticket without her consent. I paid for it. Brad lied smoothly. It is on my corporate account. She is just an employee who was terminated this morning. My jaw dropped. I stepped forward to scream that he was lying, but my mother grabbed my arm. Her nails dug into my flesh, sharp and painful. Shut up, she hissed in my ear. Do not dare embarrass me in front of these people. Brad knows what he is doing. He is the man of the family. If he says you are not going, you are not going. Mom, he is stealing my ticket, I cried, trying to pull away. He is upgrading your mother. Latoya chimed in, finally lowering her phone. Gosh, Tiana, why do you have to be so jealous? Just because you can't afford nice things doesn't mean we shouldn't have them. The agent looked at me, then at Brad, then at the long line forming behind us. She typed something into her computer. The ticket is voided, sir. I have applied the value to the upgrades. Here are your new boarding passes. Gate 24. I stood there stunned. They took my ticket. They took my money. And Brad still had my passport in his hand. I need my ID, I said, my voice breaking. Brad, give me my passport. He looked at it, then slipped it into his inner jacket pocket. Oops, he said with a mock innocent smile. I think I already checked it through with the security clearance. I will give it back to you when we get back in 2 weeks. It will be safer with me. You lose everything, Tiana. You cannot do that, I screamed. That is illegal. That was when my mother slapped me. It was a sharp, stinging blow across my cheek that silenced the entire check-in area. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Go home, Beatrice spat at me. Get out of my sight. You are nothing but a burden. A miserable, jealous little burden who fixes trash for a living. I should have left you with your grandmother years ago. She turned on her heel and marched towards security. Latoya followed her, casting one last pitying look at me before checking her reflection in her phone. Brad lingered for just a second. Uber is cheap this time of day, he said with a wink. Or you can walk. Good exercise for someone who sits at a workbench all day. He turned and followed them, leaving me standing there, my face stinging from the slap, my heart shattered into a million pieces. I had no ticket. My bank account was locked. My passport was in his pocket. I was completely erased. I walked to the gate anyway, following them like a ghost, hoping maybe my mother would turn around. Maybe she would realize she had left her daughter behind, but she never looked back. Not once. That brings us back to the moment at gate 24. I watched the jet bridge door close, sealing them into a world of champagne and caviar while I was left in the terminal. I felt the tears coming hot and fast. I was 29, but I felt like a lost child. Then the billionaire leaned in. I looked up at him. Marcus Thorne. I knew his face from the business section of the newspapers I used to stuff into bags to keep their shape. He was tech royalty, venture capital royalty. And he was looking at me not with pity, but with a strange intensity. "Why would you help me?" I whispered, wiping my eyes. He glanced at the gate agents who were watching us curiously, then back at me. His smile was razor sharp. "Because, Tiana," he said, and the way he said my name made me shiver. "I know who you are. I know you are the only person in this hemisphere who can tell a fake stitching from a real one at 50 paces. And where I am going in Paris, I need eyes like yours." He held out a hand. "Your family just declared war on you," he said. "I am offering you a nukes. Do you want to cry in the terminal, or do you want to fly G650 to Paris and show them what real power looks like?" I looked at the closed gate where my family had abandoned me. I looked at Marcus Thorne's outstretched hand. I thought about my empty bank account, my stolen passport, and the slap that was still burning on my cheek. I took his hand. "Let's go," I said. Marcus nodded to a massive security guard standing behind him. "Get her passport back from the gentleman in seat 1A, he ordered calmly. "Use whatever means necessary. And tell the pilot we are ready for takeoff." As we walked away toward the private terminal, I realized my life as the family doormat was over. They thought they had left me behind with nothing. They had no idea they had just pushed me into the arms of the only person who could destroy them. The air inside the private terminal smelled different than the rest of JFK. It smelled of expensive leather floor wax and the absence of desperation. I walked a half step behind Marcus Thorne, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The security guards at the glass doors nodded to him with a deference that bordered on fear. And just like that, we were out on the tarmac. A car was waiting. Not just a car. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, black on black, sitting there like a shark in dark water. A uniformed driver held the rear door open. Marcus gestured for me to get in. I froze. The adrenaline from the confrontation at the gate was fading, replaced by a cold, creeping terror. What was I doing? I had just agreed to go with a strange man because he had a nice suit and knew my name. My mother had just abandoned me. My passport was gone. My money was gone. And now I was about to get into a vehicle with a man who looked like he owned the city. "Get in," Tiana Marcus said. It was not a request. It was an instruction. I looked back at the terminal building. I could see the blurry shapes of people inside, normal people waiting for normal flights. I could run. I could scream. But run where? To whom? The police would ask for ID. I had none. I ducked my head and slid into the back seat. The door closed with a heavy final thud that sealed out the noise of the airport completely. The silence inside was absolute. The leather seats were soft enough to swallow me whole. Marcus slid in beside me, and the car began to move before he had even buckled his seatbelt. Suddenly, the panic I had been suppressing surged into my throat. The lock on the door clicked. It was a soft sound, but in the quiet cabin it sounded like a jail cell slamming shut. "Stop the car," I said. My voice was shrill, unrecognizable to my own ears. "Let me out!" Marcus did not look at me. He was tapping something on his phone. I said, "Let me out!" I shouted, reaching for the door handle. It was locked. Child lock. Security lock. Whatever it was, it would not budge. "You are kidnapping me. I do not know you. Let me out or I will scream." Marcus finally looked up. He pressed a button on the armrest, and a glass partition slid up, separating us from the driver. He turned his body toward me, and for the first time, I saw his eyes up close. They were dark, intelligent, and utterly calm. There was no malice in them, but there was no warmth either. "Relax," he said. "If I wanted to kidnap you, Tiana, I would not have done it in front of 50 security cameras and 3 TSA agents at Gate 24. I would have done it while you were walking to the subway." The logic hit me like a splash of cold water, but my heart was still racing. "Then, how do you know my name?" I demanded. "You said you know who I am. How? I am nobody. I am a woman who fixes purses in a basement in Queens." Marcus reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. I flinched, pressing my back against the door. But he did not pull out a weapon. He pulled out a photograph and slid it across the leather seat toward me. I looked down. It was a picture of a bag, not just any bag. It was a Hermes Himalaya Birkin, the 30-centimeter model made of Niloticus crocodile, with 18-karat white gold hardware encrusted with diamonds. It was the holy grail of handbags. "I know that bag," I whispered. I stared at the photo. I knew every inch of that bag. I knew the microscopic tear in the lining of the inner pocket. I knew the slight discoloration on the left handle that had required 3 weeks of custom color matching to fix. "You restored this bag 3 months ago," Marcus said. "It belongs to a private collector who prefers to remain anonymous. The restoration was considered impossible. 3 other experts refused to touch it. They said the risk of ruining the hide was too high. You took the job. You fixed the lining. You replated the hardware. And you charged $4,000 for a job that increased the value of the bag by $50,000. I looked up at him, my mouth slightly open. "You are the client." "I am the client," Marcus corrected. "Or rather, my venture capital firm is. We invest in alternative assets, art, wine, vintage luxury goods." He leaned back, crossing his legs. "I have been following your work for 2 years, Tiana. You have an eye for detail that is bordering on obsessive. You can spot a counterfeit stitch pattern from a photo. You can smell the difference between chemical tanning and vegetable tanning. You are the best luxury authenticator in New York, and yet your family treats you like you are unemployed." The mention of my family made the shame flare up again. My mother calling my work trash, Brad laughing at my tools. So what I said, my voice defensive. "You want me to fix another bag? You could have emailed me. You did not have to pull me out of an airport terminal." "I do not need you to fix a bag," Marcus said. His expression hardened. "I need you to catch a thief." The car turned onto the highway, picking up speed. I watched the New York skyline streak by, feeling like I had stepped into a movie. "What thief?" I asked. Marcus tapped the screen of the console between us. An image appeared. It was a necklace, a heavy ornate piece that looked like it belonged in a museum. "This is the Star of Savoy," Marcus explained. "It is going up for auction in Paris tomorrow night at the Royal Gala. It is expected to sell for $6 million. My firm is the leading bidder. We have authenticated the provenance papers. We have the history. Everything looks perfect. So buy it," I said. "There is just one problem," Marcus said. He swiped the screen. Another image appeared. It looked identical. And another. And another. "There are rumors that high-grade counterfeits have entered the European market," he continued. "Super fakes. Items so perfect that even the auction houses are getting fooled. Or paid off. I have $12 million of my investors' money on the line this weekend. If I buy a fake, my reputation is destroyed. I need someone who does not care about the paperwork or the politics. I need someone who only looks at the object." He looked at me. "I need your eyes, Tiana. I need you to be my final line of defense." I stared at the screen. The request was insane. And yet it was the first time in my life someone was looking at me with professional respect. He needed me. He was not doing me a favor. This was a transaction. "And why should I help you?" I asked, finding a scrap of courage. "My life just fell apart 5 miles back. I have nothing. Why should I care about your investment?" Marcus smiled again. It was that same razor-sharp smile from the airport. "Because," he said softly, reaching into his pocket again, "you need this. He pulled out a small blue booklet. My passport. I gasped and reached for it, but he held it just out of reach. How did you get that? I asked. Brad had it. He was through security. My head of security had a brief chat with your brother-in-law while you were crying, Marcus said casually. He explained to Brad that possessing someone else's federal identification against their will is a felony. Brad gave it up very quickly. He seems like a man who is terrified of authority. He tossed the passport into my lap. I clutched it like a lifeline. And you need this, he added, pulling a brand new iPhone out of a box. It was already turned on. Your old number is ported over, he said. Unlimited international data. And I have taken the liberty of blocking your mother and sister for the next 24 hours. You need to focus. I took the phone. My hands were shaking less now. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a simmering anger. I looked at the passport, then at the phone, then at the billionaire sitting across from me. You want me to go to Paris? I said. To authenticate a necklace. I want you to come to Paris as my fiancé, Marcus corrected. I choked on air. Excuse me. The auction is invitation only, he said, sounding bored. Couples only. It is a traditional old money event. If I bring an employee, they will make you wait in the servants' quarters. If I bring my fiancé, you get full access. You can touch the merchandise. You can be by my side every second. He leaned forward, his voice dropping an octave. And here is the best part, Tiana. Your family is going to be in Paris. Brad has been bragging on social media about attending the same gala. He is trying to network, trying to find investors for whatever Ponzi scheme he is running this week. He paused, letting the words sink in. Imagine their faces when they see you. Not the girl they left at the airport, not the girl with the canceled ticket, but the woman stepping out of a Rolls-Royce, on the arm of the man they are desperate to impress, wearing diamonds they could never afford. The image flashed in my mind. Beatrice's shock, LaToya's jealousy, Brad's fear. It was an intoxicating thought. It was dangerous. It was crazy. And it was the only thing that made the pain in my chest subside. You want me to lie, I said. I want you to act, Marcus said. You spent your whole life pretending to be okay while your family treated you like dirt. You are already a world-class actress, Tiana. I am just giving you a better stage. The car began to slow down. We were approaching a private airfield. I could see the sleek white shape of a Gulfstream jet waiting on the tarmac. What happens after Paris? I asked. If you save me from buying a fake, Marcus said, I will pay you $100,000. And I will give you the file I have on Brad. What file? The one that proves he has been stealing from your mother for 3 years, Marcus said. The world stopped. Brad was stealing from my mother. I knew he was slimy. I knew he was arrogant. But a thief. We have a deal, Marcus asked. The car stopped. The driver opened the door. The sound of jet engines whined in the distance. I looked down at my worn sneakers. Then I looked at the jet. Then I thought about my mother's face when she slapped me. I put the phone in my pocket. I gripped my passport. I stood up and stepped out of the car. I am not doing it for the money, I said, looking back at Marcus. I know, he said, stepping out beside me. You are doing it for the look on their faces. He offered me his arm. Shall we go, darling? I took his arm. The leather of his suit jacket was soft, expensive, and real. Let's go, I said. And just like that, Tiana the doormat was left on the tarmac in New York. The woman who boarded the Gulfstream jet was someone else entirely, and she was ready for war. The champagne bubbles in the crystal flute tasted like crisp apples and cold stars, but I could barely swallow past the lump of rage in my throat. We were cruising at 40,000 feet somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, inside a Gulfstream G650 that cost more than the entire neighborhood I grew up in. The cabin was silent, save for the hum of the engines and the soft rustle of Marcus Thorne turning a page of the Financial Times. I should have been relaxing. I should have been marveling at the fact that an hour ago I was a stranded nobody, and now I was flying private to Paris. But I made the mistake of unlocking the new phone Marcus had given me. I did not even have to search for it. My sister Latoya had gone live on Instagram 10 minutes ago. I tapped the screen and there they were. The video quality was crisp. They were seated in the first-class cabin of the commercial flight I was supposed to be on. My mother Beatrice was holding a glass of wine, beaming at the camera, like she had just won the lottery. "Hey everyone," Latoya chirped into the camera, doing that fake pout she used when she wanted to look cute. "Just a little update from 30,000 feet. We are on our way to Paris for Mom's big 6-0 birthday bash. Shout out to my amazing hubby Brad for surprising us with these last-minute first-class upgrades. We are living that bougie life today." The camera panned to Brad. He was wearing noise-canceling headphones and looking at a tablet pretending to study market trends. He looked up, gave a smug little salute, and winked. "Only the best for my girls," he said, smooth as oil. My mother leaned into the frame. "Praise God for blessing us with such a provider," she said. "It is a shame Tiana could not make it, but you know how she is with her little projects. She just could not get the time off." I felt the blood drain from my face. Could not get the time off. They had stolen my ticket. They had stolen my money. And now they were erasing me from the narrative, completely painting me as the flaky, irresponsible sister, while they drank champagne on my dime. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I was going to end them. I was going to type a comment that would blow their entire charade apart. I typed furiously, "You stole my ticket! Brad is a liar! I am stranded at JFK!" I was about to hit post when a hand covered the screen. "Do not do it," Marcus said. I looked up. He had set his newspaper down. His dark eyes were focused on me, calm and unyielding. "They are lying," I said, my voice shaking. "They are live streaming a lie to 5,000 people. I have to tell the truth." And then what Marcus asked. "You post a comment, maybe a few people see it before Latoya deletes it and blocks you. Then she spins a story about how you are jealous and unstable. She plays the victim. You look like the bitter sister crying for attention from the cheap seats. Is that the victory you want?" I lowered the phone, but my hands were still trembling. "They are getting away with it." "They are digging their own graves," Marcus corrected. He took the phone from my hand and locked the screen, placing it face down on the leather table between us. "Never interrupt your enemy when they are making a mistake, Tiana. Letting them think they won is part of the strategy. If they think you are broken, they will get careless, and carelessness is exactly what we need." He stood up and walked to a sleek mahogany cabinet built into the wall of the jet. He pulled out a thick manila folder and tossed it onto the table in front of me. "You asked why I was helping you," Marcus said, pouring himself a sparkling water. "You asked what I get out of this. It is time you knew the rest of the story." I looked at the folder. It was not marked. "What is this?" I asked. "That is the due diligence report on your brother-in-law," Brad Marcus said, taking a seat opposite me. "Or whatever name he is using this year." I opened the folder. The first page was a photo of Brad, but he looked younger and his hair was different. The name under the photo was not Brad. It was William Bradley. "He is not an investor," Tiana Marcus said, his voice flat and clinical. "He is a predator." I flipped through the pages. Bank statements, police reports, civil lawsuits. It was a kaleidoscope of fraud. "Brad runs a very specific kind of Ponzi scheme," Marcus explained. "He targets a specific demographic, wealthy or aspirational African American families. Families who have worked hard to build generational wealth and are terrified of losing it. Families who want to prove they have made it." "Like my mother," I whispered. "Exactly like your mother," Marcus said. "He finds women like Beatrice. Women who value status and appearance above everything else. He charms them. He marries their daughters. He promises to double their retirement funds with exclusive investment opportunities that do not exist. He uses the money from new victims to pay small dividends to the old ones just to keep the illusion alive." I stared at a document that looked like a property deed. It was my mother's house. The brownstone in Brooklyn that had been in our family for 3 generations. He has a lien on it, Marcus said, following my gaze. Your mother signed over the deed 6 months ago as collateral for a high-yield investment Brad pitched to her. She thinks she is leveraging the equity to buy a vacation home in Martha's Vineyard. In reality, she just handed him the title to the only real asset she owns. I felt sick. I hated my mother for what she did to me today. I hated her for the years of emotional neglect. But reading this, seeing how easily she had been played, it did not feel like victory. It felt like watching a car crash in slow motion. She is going to lose the house, I asked. If Brad is not stopped, she will lose everything, Marcus said. The house, her pension, her reputation in the church. He will drain her dry, and when the money runs out, he will disappear. Just like he did to a family in Atlanta 3 years ago, and a family in Chicago before that. Why do you care? I asked, looking up at him. You are a billionaire. Brad is a small-time crook. Why intervene? Because he tried to do it to me, Marcus said, and his eyes went cold. 2 months ago, Brad managed to get a meeting with one of my junior partners. He tried to use my firm's name to legitimize his scheme. He told people we were backing his fund. Marcus leaned forward. I do not like thieves, Tiana, and I definitely do not like thieves who use my name to rob grandmothers. I was building a case against him to hand to the FBI, but I needed a smoking gun. I needed to catch him in the act of a major fraud. He pointed to the photo of the Star of Savoy necklace on his tablet. That necklace is his endgame, Marcus said. Brad has convinced a group of investors, including your mother, that he has a buyer lined up for that necklace in Dubai for $20 million. He is pooling their money to bid on it tomorrow night. But he is not going to buy the real necklace. He is going to buy a high-grade replica for a fraction of the price, pocket the difference, and tell your mother and the others that the deal fell through or the necklace was stolen. He looked at me, expecting a reaction. So my family is in Paris to get robbed, I said. Your family is in Paris to finance their own destruction, Marcus corrected. And they used your money to buy the plane tickets to get there. The absurdity of it made me laugh, a dry, humorless sound. They treated me like I was the failure because I work with my hands, because I fix old things. And meanwhile, they are handing their life savings to a con artist because he wears a nice suit. You fix things, Tiana, Marcus said softly. That is not a failure. That is a gift. You see the truth in objects. You look at a bag and you know its history. You know if it was stitched by a master in Paris or a machine in a sweatshop. You value authenticity. Your family values appearance. That is why they are easy marks. And that is why you are the only one who can stop him. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the clouds stretching to the horizon. We are starting our descent, Marcus said. When we land in Paris, you are no longer Tiana the purse fixer. You are Tiana the fiancée of Marcus Thorne. You are untouchable. You are expensive. And you are the only person in the room who knows exactly what Brad is. He turned back to me. Can you do this? Can you look your mother in the eye and pretend you are not bleeding? Can you stand next to Brad and smile while you hold the knife that will cut his strings? I closed the folder. I thought about the way my mother had looked at me at the airport. The disgust, the dismissal, as if I were something she had stepped in. I stood up. I smoothed the front of my jeans, which suddenly felt woefully underdressed for the role I was about to play. I need a new dress, I said. Marcus smiled. A real smile this time. I have arranged for a stylist to meet us at the Ritz, he said. You will have the best wardrobe in Paris. The pilot announced our final approach. The plane banked, and through the window, I saw the lights of Paris glittering below us like a net of diamonds. Somewhere down there, my family was sleeping in a hotel room they could not afford, dreaming of a fortune they would never see. They thought they had left me behind in the dirt. They did not know I was coming for them from the sky. I am ready, I told Marcus. Good, he said, because the show starts the moment the wheels touch the ground. The Gulfstream touched down at Le Bourget with a gentle thud. As we taxied to the private hangar, I felt a strange transformation taking hold. The scared girl from Queens was gone. The woman who unbuckled her seatbelt, was cold, calculated, and very dangerous. I was not just here to save my mother's house. I was here to teach them a lesson about value. They thought I was worthless. By the time I was done with them, they would know exactly how much I cost. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime revealing the lobby of the Ritz, which had transformed into a runway of evening wear and old money. I stepped out, feeling the weight of the new dress Marcus had commissioned for me. It was not just clothing, it was armor. A floor-length masterpiece of pearl-colored silk organza hand, embroidered with silver thread, that caught the light like trapped starlight. It was haute couture in its purest form, delicate, priceless, and demanding of reverence. Marcus offered me his arm, his tuxedo sharp enough to cut glass. "Everyone is looking at you," he murmured. "Ignore them. They are just wondering how the moon decided to walk among mortals tonight." I smiled, feeling a confidence I had never known existed. But that confidence shattered the moment we reached the bottom of the grand staircase. My family was still there. They had not left. Of course they had not left. They were clustered near the concierge desk, engaged in a loud argument with the poor security team. Brad was waving his phone, shouting about his rights. My mother Beatrice was dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue, playing the role of the fainting victim. And Latoya was pacing, holding a glass of red wine she must have swiped from a passing tray, her eyes scanning the room with manic intensity. She spotted me instantly. Her eyes widened, taking in the dress. The jealousy that flashed across her face was so raw it was almost ugly. She looked down at her own outfit, a store-bought cocktail dress that was trying too hard and failing, and then back at my custom couture. "Hey!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the polite murmur of the lobby. "Tiana." She started toward me. Security moved to intercept, but Latoya was fast. She dodged a guard, feigning a stumble. "Oops!" she cried out, her voice dripping with fake panic. It happened in slow motion. She lunged forward, pretending to trip over her own heels. The glass of red wine in her hand went flying. It was not an accident. It was a precision strike. The dark crimson liquid hit me mid-thigh, splashing across the pearl silk like a gunshot wound. The stain bloomed, instantly ugly and violent, soaking into the delicate embroidery and ruining thousands of dollars of handiwork in a heartbeat. Gasps rippled through the lobby. The music seemed to stop. Latoya steadied herself, a smirk playing on her lips before she masked it with exaggerated horror. "Oh my God, Tiana!" she shrieked, covering her mouth. "I am so sorry. I tripped. These floors are so slippery. Look what happened to your dress. It is ruined. You look like a disaster." My mother broke free from the guards and rushed over, not to help, but to gloat. "Oh, Tiana," she sighed, shaking her head. "You always were clumsy, attracting messes wherever you go. That dress was probably a loan too. How are you going to pay for it now? You do not belong here, honey. This is a sign." Brad snickered from the sidelines. "Looks like the Cinderella hour is over," he muttered. I stood frozen, feeling the cold wine seep through to my skin. The dress was destroyed. The bottom half looked like a crime scene. I felt the old Tiana rising up, the one who would have burst into tears and run to the bathroom to hide. The one who would have let them win. Marcus stepped forward, his face thunderous, ready to destroy them, but I put a hand on his chest, stopping him. "No," I said softly. I looked at the stain. Then I looked at Latoya, who was trying hard not to laugh. She wanted me to cry. She wanted me to run. She wanted to prove that no matter what I wore, I was still the girl who fixed old things. I took a deep breath. I am an authenticator. I restore things. I see potential where others see trash. "Monsieur Dubois." I called out, my voice steady and clear. The manager rushed over, looking horrified. "Mademoiselle, I am devastated. We will get you a towel immediately." I need scissors," I said, cutting him off. He blinked. "Pardon." "Scissors," I repeated. "Large, sharp shears. Now please." He hesitated, then snapped his fingers at an assistant. Seconds later, a pair of heavy silver tailoring shears was placed in my hand. The lobby went dead silent. My mother looked nervous. "What are you doing?" "Tiana, do not make a scene. You are embarrassing enough as it is." I ignored her. I gathered the heavy silk skirt in my left hand, bunching the fabric just above the wine stain. The embroidery scratched against my palm. I looked at Latoya. "You missed a spot," I said. Then I cut. The sound of the blade slicing through the silk was crisp and satisfying. I cut boldly, following the line of the embroidery slashing through the skirt at a sharp angle. I removed the entire bottom half of the dress, the wine-stained fabric falling to the marble floor in a heavy crimson puddle. I did not stop there. I grabbed the hem of the remaining fabric, which now hit me mid-thigh on one side and dipped lower on the other. I pulled a few loose threads, creating a raw, deconstructed fringe that caught the light. I tucked a piece of the excess fabric into the waistband, creating an impromptu architectural ruffle that gave the dress a sudden avant-garde edge. It took less than a minute. When I was done, I was no longer wearing a ruined ball gown. I was wearing a daring high-fashion cocktail dress that looked like something straight off a runway in Milan. It was edgy, it was rebellious, and it was flawless. I tossed the shears onto a velvet armchair. I kicked the pile of wine-soaked rags toward Latoya. "You can have that," I said, cold as ice. "It matches your soul." For a second, nobody moved. Then a woman standing near the bar, a famous fashion editor I recognized from magazines, started to clap. It was a slow, rhythmic applause. Then her companion joined in. Then the concierge. Within seconds, the entire lobby was applauding. People were cheering. "Brilliant," someone shouted. "That is the most punk rock thing I have ever seen," the editor said, raising her glass to me. Latoya stood there, her mouth gaping open, her face turning a blotchy red. She had tried to destroy me, and instead, she had made me the center of attention. My mother looked like she had swallowed a lemon. Brad was backing away, looking for an exit. Marcus stepped up to me. He ignored the crowd. He ignored my family. He took my hand and raised it to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles, his eyes dancing with amusement and pride. "You always know how to shine, darling," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Even covered in cheap wine, you are the most expensive thing in the room." He turned to the security guards, who were now closing in on my family with renewed purpose. "Get this trash out of my sight," Marcus ordered, gesturing to my mother and sister. "And send the cleaning bill for the carpet to Mr. Bradley. I believe he has a tab open." As we walked out into the Parisian night, the applause following us, I glanced back. Latoya was crying real tears this time as she was escorted out the side door. My mother was arguing with a guard. I adjusted my new hemline and stepped into the waiting car. I had walked in a princess, but I was walking out a queen, and the night was just beginning. The private dining room at L'Ambroisie was quieter than a library and more expensive than a 4-year college education. The walls were lined with tapestries that looked older than the United States, and the table was set with enough silver to pay off my student loans. It was the kind of place where you whispered even if you had nothing to hide. But my family had plenty to hide, and they were loud about it. Marcus had invited them to dinner. It was a strategic move, he told me. Keep your enemies close and keep them fed. If they are eating your food, they are less likely to notice you are sharpening the knife. I sat to his right, my back straight, my new dress a sleek black sheath that Marcus had pulled from a rack at Chanel earlier that afternoon. My mother Beatrice sat across from me, looking like she had won the lottery. She had changed into a sequined gown that was far too bright for a Parisian dinner, but perfect for an Atlanta church gala. She was beaming at Marcus, ignoring me completely. "Mr. Thorne," my mother gushed, leaning over her foie gras. "It is just so gracious of you to host us, after the unfortunate incident in the lobby. You know Tiana has always been clumsy, a little rough around the edges. We tried to put her in ballet, but she just did not have the grace for it. She prefers working with her hands, if you know what I mean." She said it like an insult. Like working with your hands was something dirty. Marcus swirled his wine, his eyes dancing with a cold amusement. Is that so, Mrs. Williams? Mrs. I find Tiana quite graceful. And her hands are very talented. My mother let out a high-pitched laugh that grated on my nerves. Oh, you are too kind. But really, she fixes old bags. Can you imagine? We tried to get her to do something respectable like her sister Latoya, who is in media. But Tiana always liked digging through other people's trash. It is a little embarrassing, honestly, but we love her anyway. I gripped my fork so hard my knuckles turned white. Digging through trash. I was the premier luxury authenticator in New York City. I restored heirlooms. I preserved history. But to Beatrice, I was just a glorified garbage man. I took a sip of water, letting the ice cool my burning throat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that the man sitting next to her respected my work more in 24 hours than she had in 29 years. Marcus placed a hand over mine on the table. His skin was warm and the weight of his hand was a silent reminder. Wait, let them dig. Speaking of business, Brad interjected, wiping grease from his chin. He was wearing a tuxedo that was a size too small and he looked like he was melting under the crystal chandelier. Mr. Thorne, I have been meaning to bend your ear. I run a boutique investment firm in Manhattan. Apex Capital. We focus on high-yield crypto arbitrage and offshore real estate. Very exclusive. Marcus turned his attention to Brad like a lion noticing a limping gazelle. Is that right? High yield, you say? Oh, very high, Brad said, puffing out his chest. He did not notice the trap. He just saw a billionaire and a checkbook. We are seeing returns of 20 to 30% monthly. It is a proprietary algorithm I developed. We are actually opening a new round of funding this week. Since we are practically family now, I could probably squeeze you in. I almost choked on my bread. 20% monthly. It was the most obvious Ponzi pitch I had ever heard, but my mother was nodding along, looking at Brad with adoration. Brad is a genius, Beatrice said, patting his arm. He handles all the family finances. He doubled my retirement fund in 3 months, on paper at least. Marcus leaned forward, his expression one of polite fascination. That is incredible returns, Brad. Unheard of, really. I'm always looking for new opportunities. My liquid assets are sitting idle at the moment. Perhaps we could discuss the details. Brad's eyes practically turned into dollar signs. He took a large gulp of wine. Absolutely. I can show you the prospectus. We are actually here in Paris to close a deal on a major asset, a historic piece of jewelry. Once we flip it, the returns will be astronomical. The Star of Savoy, I said quietly. Brad froze. His fork clattered onto his plate. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing into slits. How do you know about that, Tiana? I smiled. It was a tight, dangerous smile. I read the news, Brad. It is the biggest auction of the year. Everyone knows about it. I did not tell him that I knew he was planning to buy a fake. I did not tell him I knew he was using my mother's house as collateral. I just let him sweat. Brad laughed nervously. Yes, well, it is very hush-hush. But since you brought it up, yes. We are bidding tomorrow. And when we win it, Apex Capital is going to the moon. My mother raised her glass. To Brad, the man who takes care of us. Unlike some people who cannot even keep a plane ticket. She shot a look at me full of venom. Why can't you be more like him, Tiana? Look at where he has brought us. Paris. The Ritz. What have you ever done for this family besides drain our resources? The injustice of it burned in my chest like acid. I paid for the tickets she was using. I paid the utility bills when she was short. I fixed her vintage Chanel flap bag for free, a job that would have cost a client $2,000. And Brad was stealing the roof over her head. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Marcus spoke first. You know, Beatrice, Marcus said, his voice silky smooth. It is interesting you value Brad's contribution so highly. In my experience, the loudest man in the room is usually the one with the empty wallet. But Tiana, she is quiet, she observes. That is where the real value is. My mother scoffed. Value. Please. She is lucky she is pretty. That is the only value she has, and even that is fading. She is almost 30, no husband, no prospects, just a room full of old leather scraps. Latoya giggled. She is just jealous, Mom. Look at her. She is wearing a dress Marcus bought her, eating dinner Marcus paid for. She is basically a charity case with a better wardrobe. I felt a vibration against my leg. My phone. I glanced down at my lap. The screen was lit up with a text message. It was from a number I did not recognize, but I knew exactly who it was. I looked across the table. Brad was holding his phone under the table, staring at me with a look of pure malice. I unlocked the screen. The message was short and brutal. Meet me in the washroom in 5 minutes. If you say a word to your boyfriend about the business or the house, I will make sure your mother is sleeping on a park bench by Christmas. I have the power of attorney, Tiana. Try me. I stared at the words. The blood roared in my ears. Power of attorney. He had gotten her to sign over power of attorney. That meant he could sell the house without her permission. He could empty her accounts. He could destroy her life with a signature. I looked up. Brad winked at me. It was a sick, arrogant wink. He thought he had won. He thought I was the same weak girl he had bullied at the airport. He did not know I had Marcus Thorne on my side. He did not know I had seen the dossier. And he definitely did not know that the phone in my hand was recording everything. I stood up. My chair scraped against the parquet floor. "Excuse me," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I need to use the powder room." "Tiana, sit down." My mother snapped. "We are not finished eating." "Let her go," Marcus said. His eyes met mine. They were dark and reassuring. "Go. Get him." I walked out of the private dining room. My heels clicked on the marble floor. I turned the corner toward the restrooms. The hallway was empty, lined with mirrors that reflected my new expensive silhouette. I waited. 30 seconds later, I heard heavy footsteps behind me. I turned. Brad was there. He had lost the smile. He looked dangerous now, like a cornered rat. He grabbed my arm and shoved me toward the alcove near the restroom entrance, away from the main corridor. His grip was painful, bruising. "You think you are clever, don't you?" He hissed, his face inches from mine. "You think because you found a sugar daddy you can look down on me." "Get your hands off me, Brad," I said, keeping my voice low. He squeezed harder. "Listen to me, you little trash picker. You are going to go back in there, and you are going to tell Marcus that my fund is solid. You are going to tell him that I am a genius. And then you are going to keep your mouth shut about everything else." Or what I asked. "Or I sell the brownstone," Brad said. "Tomorrow. I already have the papers drafted." Beatrice signed them, thinking it was for the refinancing. "If you mess this up for me, I will leave her with nothing. No house, no money. She will be on the street, and it will be your fault." I looked at him. I looked at the sweat on his upper lip. I looked at the cheap fabric of his rented tuxedo. "You are a monster," I whispered. "I am a businessman," Brad sneered. "And you are just a girl who fixes broken things. You can't fix this, Tiana. I own her." He let go of my arm and shoved me back. 5 minutes, he said. "Fix your face. And remember who holds the keys." He turned and walked back toward the dining room, adjusting his cuffs, regaining his composure with every step. I stood there in the hallway, rubbing my bruising arm. I felt sick. I felt terrified. But then I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. The voice memo app was still running. The red waveform was pulsing. I own her. I will leave her with nothing. I had him. I stopped the recording and hit save. Then I sent a copy to Marcus, and a copy to the cloud. I looked in the mirror. My reflection stared back. The emerald dress, the diamonds. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I fixed my lipstick. I smoothed my hair. I was not just a girl who fixed broken things. I was the girl who was about to break him. I walked back into the dining room. Brad was laughing at something Marcus had said, pouring himself more wine. My mother was smiling, oblivious to the fact that the man next to her had just threatened to make her homeless. I sat down. Marcus looked at me. He saw the mark on my arm. His jaw tightened, but he did not say a word. He checked his phone. He saw the file, he looked at Brad, and for the first time I saw the shark smile directed at someone other than me. "So, Brad," Marcus said, lifting his glass. "Tell me more about this house you are using as collateral. It sounds valuable." Brad beamed, thinking he had hooked the whale. "Oh, it is a prime asset." Prime. I picked up my fork. The foie gras tasted delicious. "Eat up, Brad," I thought. "It is the last good meal you are going to have for a very long time." The dinner at l'Ambroisie ended with the kind of heavy, suffocating silence that usually precedes a natural disaster. My mother Beatrice was blissfully unaware, drunk on vintage Bordeaux and the proximity to a billionaire. She was laughing too loudly at Marcus's polite remarks, her hand resting familiarly on his arm, as we stood up from the table. It made my skin crawl. She had no idea that the man she was flirting with was currently calculating exactly how many years her son-in-law would spend in a federal penitentiary. Marcus signaled for the check, his movements smooth and unhurried. He caught my eye as he stood, a subtle tilt of his head toward the heavy velvet curtains that separated our private dining room from the main corridor. "I understand," I thought. "Create the opening. I need to freshen up before we leave," I announced, grabbing my clutch. Brad moved instantly. He had been waiting for this. He sprang from his chair like a coiled spring, his desperation palpable. "I will walk you, Tiana," he said, flashing a tight shark-like smile at Marcus. "I need to make a call anyway. Family business." Marcus nodded, his face a mask of indifference. "Take your time, Brad. Beatrice was just telling me about her work with the church. I am fascinated." My mother preened, distracted. Brad grabbed my elbow, his grip firm but hidden by the sleeve of my jacket. He steered me out of the dining room, not toward the restrooms, but down a narrow service corridor that smelled faintly of lemon polish and old dust. It was a blind spot. No cameras, no witnesses, just us and the lie he was trying to keep alive. He pushed me into a small alcove used for storing extra chairs. The lighting was dim, casting long shadows across his face. He looked different now that the audience was gone. The charm had evaporated, leaving behind a sweaty, frantic man who knew the walls were closing in. He reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "Look at this," he commanded. He dumped the contents into his palm. It was a watch. A Patek Philippe Nautilus 57111, gleaming under the low light. It was heavy set with what looked like baguette diamonds around the bezel. To the untrained eye, it was a masterpiece worth $300,000. To my eye, it was a crime scene. I took it from him, pulling a jeweler's loop from my clutch, a habit I never broke no matter how expensive the dress I was wearing. I brought the watch to my eye. The weight was wrong, off by maybe 5 grams. The dial color was a fraction of a shade too blue, lacking that specific gradient depth that Patek perfected. And the movement, I listened. It ticked. A real Nautilus hums. It glides. This one had a heartbeat, a tiny mechanical stutter that screamed mass production. "It is a superclone," I said, handing it back. "A high-end Chinese replica. Maybe worth $800 on the black market. The setting is decent, but the diamonds are lab-grown. The movement is a modified Miyota." Brad snatched it back, his eyes wild. "It does not matter what it is," he hissed. "It matters what Marcus thinks it is." He stepped closer, invading my personal space. "Listen to me, Tiana. Tomorrow before the auction starts, I am going to offer this to Marcus as a private sale. A sweetener. I am going to tell him I need liquidity for the necklace bid. I am going to ask for $200,000. Cash." I laughed. A cold, sharp sound. "Marcus Thorne buys companies before breakfast. You think he is going to buy a fake watch from a man wearing a rented tuxedo? He has experts, Brad. He has people who—" "He has you," Brad interrupted. The words hung in the air. "He trusts you." Brad continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You are the authenticator. You are the genius who fixes Birkins. If you tell him it is real, he buys it. He is obsessed with you right now. He is not looking at the watch. He is looking at you. You verify it. He writes the check. And if I refuse, I asked. Brad smiled. It was the ugliest thing I had ever seen. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. He turned it toward me. It was a document. A loan agreement. I told you I had power of attorney over your mother's house, he said. But I did not tell you who holds the note. It is not a bank, Tiana. Banks take months to foreclose. This is a hard money lender in Queens. The kind of guys who do not send letters. They send movers. He swiped to the signature page. Beatrice Williams. I borrowed $400,000 against the brownstone, Brad said casually. The payments are due. Specifically, a balloon payment of $50,000 is due tomorrow at noon. If I do not wire that money, they take the house. Immediately. Your mother, your sister, all her tacky furniture out on the curb by sunset. I stared at the phone. My mother's signature, shaky but legible, signed her life away. You monster, I whispered. She trusts you. She thinks you are a financial wizard. She is a greedy old woman who wanted a shortcut to being rich, Brad spat back. Do not put this on me. She signed the papers. She wanted the returns. Now here's the deal. You authenticate this watch tomorrow. You tell Marcus it is a rare off-catalog piece. You tell him it is worth double what I am asking. He buys it. I pay the lender. Your mother keeps her house. And if I don't? Then she is homeless, Brad said. And I will tell her it was your fault. I will tell her I had a deal lined up to save the house, but you sabotaged it because you were jealous. Who do you think she will believe, Tiana? The son-in-law who took her to Paris? Or the daughter who abandoned her at the airport? The rage I felt was so hot it was blinding. He had trapped me. He had weaponized my mother's stupidity and my own guilt against me. He knew I hated her, but he also knew I wasn't the kind of person who would let an old woman sleep on the street. I looked at the fake watch in his hand. Then I looked at his face slick with sweat and arrogance. I need a moment, I said, my voice trembling. I forced myself to sound weak, to sound beaten. I need to think. There is no time to think, Brad grabbed my shoulders, shaking me. We go back in there. You smile. You touch his hand. You set the stage. And tomorrow when I pull this out, you nod. That is it. Just a nod. Fine, I choked out, letting a tear slip down my cheek. Fine. I will do it. Just promise me you will pay the loan. I promise, Brad said, his relief instant and sickening. He smoothed my hair, a gesture that made me want to vomit. Good girl. I knew you were smart. We are family, Tiana. We have to look out for each other. He put the watch back in his pocket. Fix your face, he said. You look like a mess. He turned and walked back toward the dining room, adjusting his jacket, instantly transforming back into the confident businessman. I stood alone in the alcove for a moment, letting the silence wash over me. I wiped the fake tear from my cheek. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of lemon polish and dust. Then I raised my left wrist. On it was a Cartier crash watch, a gift Marcus had given me on the plane along with the phone. It was beautiful, melted and surreal, paved with diamonds. But it was also something else. I tapped the sapphire crown twice. The face of the watch flickered, showing a small red dot that had been pulsing for the last 10 minutes. Recording saved. I had him. I had the confession. I had the blackmail. I had the admission of the fake watch and the predatory loan. I had his voice clear as day, admitting he was going to defraud Marcus Thorne and that he had tricked my mother. I tapped the screen again, sending the audio file directly to Marcus's secure server. I looked in the mirror hanging in the hallway. My reflection looked back at me. The emerald dress was still stunning. My makeup was flawless. But my eyes were different. They were the eyes of an executioner. Brad thought he had just secured his getaway car. He didn't realize he had just handed me the keys to the bulldozer. I walked back into the dining room. Brad was pouring wine, laughing at something my mother said. Marcus looked up as I entered, His face was neutral, but his eyes locked onto my wrist. I gave a microscopic nod. Received. Marcus smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful smile. "Everything all right, my dear?" he asked as I sat down. "Perfect," I said, picking up my napkin. "Brad and I just had a lovely chat about investments. I think tomorrow is going to be a very profitable day." Brad winked at me from across the table. I smiled back. "Enjoy the champagne, Brad," I thought, because the hangover is going to be lethal. The morning sun streaming through the silk curtains of the imperial suite should have felt like a blessing, but instead it felt like a spotlight on a crime scene. I sat on the edge of the velvet chaise lounge, my new phone burning a hole in my hand. I had woken up feeling strong, feeling ready, but the internet has a way of dragging you back into the mud before you have even brushed your teeth. My sister Latoya was live on Instagram. Again. She was sitting in what looked like a cramped hotel room, the kind with beige walls and fluorescent lighting that hums. Her eyes were puffy, and she was wearing no makeup, which for Latoya was a calculated costume choice, meant to scream distress. "You guys do not understand." She sniffled into the camera, wiping a non-existent tear. "My sister Tiana has changed. She is not the person we raised. We brought her to Paris to celebrate our mother's birthday, and she just vanished." The viewer count was climbing. 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 people watching my sister rewrite history. "She abandoned us at the airport." Latoya lied, her voice cracking perfectly. "She stole our passports for a few hours just to scare us. And then we see her at the Ritz with this billionaire. You guys know who Marcus Thorne is, right? The tech mogul." She leaned closer to the camera, whispering like she was sharing a dangerous secret. "I think she put something on him. Roots. Voodoo. Something. Because he looked at her like he was under a spell. And she looked at us like she did not even know us. She looked at our mother, who worked 2 jobs to feed her, and laughed. She said we were too poor to breathe the same air as her." The comments were scrolling so fast they were a blur of angry emojis and accusations. "She sold her soul for a bag." "Typical gold digger. How can you do that to your own blood?" "Praying for you, Latoya." I felt a physical pain in my chest. It was not the lies that hurt. It was the speed at which people believed them. They did not know that I paid the bills. They did not know Brad had stolen the deed to our house. They only saw the crying girl in the cheap hotel and the sister in the ivory tower. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. I wanted to scream until my throat bled. They were winning the court of public opinion while I sat here in silence. "Turn it off." Marcus was standing in the doorway holding 2 cups of espresso. He was dressed in a charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin, his face unreadable. "They are destroying me," I said, my voice trembling. "They are painting me as a monster. By the time this auction starts tonight, I will be the most hated woman in Paris." "Good," Marcus said, walking over and handing me a cup. I stared at him. "Good. Are you crazy?" "Villains are interesting," Tiana, Marcus said, sitting down opposite me. "Victims are boring. Let them hate you. Hate is just attention. And tonight we need everyone looking at you. If they think you are a ruthless social climber, they will believe you when you authenticate the merchandise. They will think you are one of them." He gestured to the large antique trunk sitting on the table in the center of the room. "Forget Latoya. Forget the internet. I need your eyes." I looked at the trunk. It was a 19th century Louis Vuitton steamer trunk canvas, worn leather, cracked hardware, tarnished. It was a prop. Marcus had bought it from a dealer that morning. He wanted me to restore the lock mechanism before the gala tonight as a demonstration of my skills to a few key collectors. It was part of the cover story. The talented fiancé. I took a deep breath and set the phone down. He was right. Anger was fuel, but focus was the weapon. I walked over to the table. I picked up my tools. The familiar weight of the brass polisher and the horsehair brush grounded me. I turned off the noise in my head. I focused on the oxidation on the brass lock. I focused on the grain of the canvas. For 2 hours I worked. I scrubbed, I polished, I conditioned. The smell of beeswax and lemon oil filled the suite, replacing the scent of my own anxiety. Marcus watched me in silence, working on his laptop, answering emails, occasionally glancing up with a look of approval. When I was finished, the lock gleamed like gold. The leather was supple and rich. It looked like it had just come off the Titanic but survived. "You are a magician," Marcus said, standing up to inspect my work. "I am a technician," I corrected, wiping my hands on a cloth. "Magic is fake. This is real." A knock at the door interrupted us. It was Elias, the head of security. He was holding a large orange box. The delivery for the charity auction arrived. Elias said, his face grim. "From Mr. Bradley." My stomach clenched. "Brad." "Bring it here," Marcus ordered. Elias placed the box on the table next to the trunk. It was a Hermes box. The iconic orange was unmistakable. Brad had bragged at dinner that he was donating a rare bag to the silent auction, a tax write-off he called it. He claimed it was a vintage Kelly bag worth $50,000. I reached for the box. My hands were steady now. I was in my element. I lifted the lid. The tissue paper rustled softly. I pulled back the layers, revealing the bag inside. It was a Kelly 28 in black box leather with gold hardware. It looked stunning. The leather shone with a glass-like finish. The stitching was angled perfectly. The stamp was crisp. To 99% of the world, this was a masterpiece. But I was the 1%. I lifted the bag out of the box. I held it by the handle, feeling the weight. It was heavy, good. But was it heavy enough? I brought it close to my face, inhaling deeply. Leather smells like earth and skin and tannins. It has a depth, a richness. This bag smelled like chemicals. It smelled like high-grade plastic and glue masked by a cheap leather perfume spray. I pulled out my loop and examined the stitching on the sangles, the straps that closed the bag. Hermes uses a saddle stitch done by hand with 2 needles. If you look closely, the stitches are slightly irregular, angling sharply. These stitches were perfect. Too perfect. They were machine-made. A machine that had been programmed to mimic a hand stitch but lacked the soul of the artisan. I opened the bag and checked the date stamp hidden behind the front strap. It read Z for 2021, but the font, the serif on the letter Z, was a fraction of a millimeter too thick. I set the bag down. I felt a cold fury rising in my chest, hotter than the anger I had felt watching Latoya's video. "It is a fake," I said. Marcus looked at me, his eyebrows raising. "Are you sure?" "I am positive," I said. "It is a super fake. Probably from a top-tier factory in Guangzhou. It cost maybe $2,000 to make. It would fool a casual collector. It might even fool a resale site. But it is garbage." "So he is defrauding the charity," Marcus said. "He is donating a fake bag, claiming a $50,000 value for the tax deduction and the social clout." "He is doing more than that," I said, realizing the full scope of Brad's arrogance. "He gave this to Latoya. She thinks it is real. She thinks she is walking into that gala tonight holding a fortune. She thinks she is finally on my level." I looked at the bag. It represented everything Brad was. Shiny on the outside, hollow on the inside, and utterly fraudulent. He was willing to let his wife, my sister, stand on a stage and present a felony to the world just so he could look like a big shot. Marcus picked up the bag. "We can pull it," he said. "We can tell the auction house quietly, save the embarrassment." I thought about the airport. I thought about the text message threatening my mother. I thought about Latoya's video calling me a witch and a thief. "No," I said. Marcus looked at me, waiting. "Do not pull it," I said. "Let her walk it up there. Let her hold it under the lights. Let Brad stand there and preen like a peacock." I picked up a small, sharp leather knife from my toolkit. I tested the edge against my thumb. It was razor sharp. Marcus stepped closer. "Tiana, what are you planning? You said you wanted to expose him. We have the recording. We have the fake watch. We have enough." "It is not enough," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Exposing him gets my mother's house back, maybe. But it does not teach them. It does not break them." I looked up at Marcus. I saw my reflection in his dark eyes. I did not look like Tiana the victim anymore. I looked like Tiana the executioner. They tried to erase me, I said. They tried to take my dignity, my name, and my sanity. They humiliated me in front of strangers at an airport terminal. They laughed while I cried. I gripped the knife handle tight. I do not want to just Vachtron expose them, Marcus. I want to hide diet, destroy them. I want to burn their reputations so thoroughly that ash is the only thing left. I want Brad in handcuffs, and I want my family on their knees understanding exactly who they messed with. Marcus smiled. It was a slow, terrifying smile. Then you shall have it, he said. He took the fake bag and placed it back in the box. Tonight is the Royal Gala, he said. The theme is Versailles, excess, decadence, and public executions. He offered me his hand. Go get dressed, my love. Wear the red. It hides the blood better. I took his hand. I was ready. The prep work was done. The stage was set. Tonight the authenticator was going to spot the fake, and then she was going to cut it open for the world to see. The night air outside the Palais Garnier was biting cold, a sharp contrast to the golden warmth spilling from the grand entrance where the world's elite were arriving for the royal gala. I stood at the top of the marble steps, wrapped in a vintage fur stole Marcus had draped over my shoulders, feeling like a general surveying the battlefield. Below me, the line of black limousines stretched down the block, discharging dukes, duchesses, and tech moguls, who walked the red carpet with bored familiarity. And then there was my family. They were huddled to the side of the velvet rope, shivering in their rented finery, looking like stray dogs staring into a butcher shop window. They did not have tickets. They did not have invitations. They had Brad's lies and LaToya's ring light. I watched as LaToya held her phone up high, finding the perfect angle to hide the security guard who was currently blocking their path. Hey guys, she beamed into the camera, her teeth chattering slightly. We are just waiting outside for a moment, soaking in the Parisian atmosphere. The ambassador is sending his personal detail to escort us in so we do not have to deal with the crowds. VIP life is crazy, you know. Beatrice was standing next to her, trying to look regal while rubbing her bare arms for warmth. Brad was arguing with the head of security, waving his phone around as if a PDF on a cracked screen could override the guest list of the most exclusive event in Europe. I checked my earpiece. I was not just a guest tonight. Marcus had arranged for me to be designated as the chief authenticator for the evening's charity auction. It gave me a headset, a badge, and absolute authority over who got near the merchandise. Let them in, I murmured into the microphone. The head of security looked up at me, startled. He touched his ear, receiving the order. He frowned, looking back at the ragtag group of Americans screaming about their rights, but he stepped aside. I walked down the steps slowly, letting my red silk train pool behind me. The dress was a weapon, blood red and structured like a corset, sharp enough to draw blood. As I approached, the conversation at the bottom of the stairs died instantly. LaToya lowered her phone. Beatrice gasped, clutching her fake Chanel clutch. Brad stopped mid-sentence, his mouth hanging open like a fish. They looked at me, and for the first time, they did not see the sister they bullied or the daughter they abandoned. They saw the woman who held the keys to the castle. Tiana. My mother breathed, her eyes darting from my diamond earrings to the security detail flanking me. What are you doing here? We were told you were. Overseas, I finished for her, my voice cool and amused. Working. That is the lie you told Dr. Gregory, right? Well, here I am. Working. I flashed my badge. Chief Authenticator. Brad recovered first. A greasy smile spread across his face as he pushed past my mother to get closer to me. Tiana, thank God. There has been a mix-up. These idiots cannot find our names on the list. Tell them who we are. Tell them we are with Marcus Thorne. I looked at him. I looked at the sweat staining the collar of his shirt. You are not with Marcus Thorne, I said, loud enough for the people in line to hear. You are with me, and that is the only reason you are getting inside this building. I turned to the security guard. Pierre, admit these three. They are the entertainment for the evening. Pierre nodded, unhooking the velvet rope. My mother bristled. Entertainment. Tiana, do not be disrespectful. We are guests of honor. Brad said he secured the royal table. I laughed a dry, humorless sound. The royal table. Follow me, mother. I turned and walked back up the stairs, not waiting to see if they followed. I knew they would. Desperation has a gravity of its own. I led them through the massive, gilded doors into the main hall. The gala was a sensory overload of crystal velvet and live orchestral music. Waiters circulated with trays of caviar. The air smelled of expensive perfume and old money. My family walked behind me, their heads on swivels, eyes wide with greed, taking it all in. LaToya was already filming again, trying to make it look like she belonged. We walked past the prime tables near the stage where the billionaires and royalty sat. Brad started to veer toward an empty table near the front, his hand reaching for a chair. Not there, I said sharply. Keep moving. We walked past the second tier of tables occupied by millionaires and celebrities. Beatrice slowed down, trying to catch the eye of a famous actress, but I kept walking. We walked past the third tier, and the fourth. We walked until the crystal chandeliers gave way to simpler lighting. We walked until the plush carpet ended and the service tile began. We walked all the way to the back corner of the ballroom, right next to the swinging double doors of the kitchen and the entrance to the public restrooms. Here, I said, gesturing to a small wobbly table that had clearly been dragged out of storage at the last minute. My mother stared at it. It was set for 3, but the tablecloth was slightly stained, and there was no centerpiece, just a flickering tea light in a glass jar. Every time the kitchen doors swung open, a blast of steam and the smell of dishwater washed over the table. This is a joke, LaToya said, her voice rising. We cannot sit here. We are VIPs. It smells like onions. It is the only table available. I lied, my face a mask of polite regret. Unless you want to go back outside. It is starting to rain, I hear. Brad grabbed LaToya's arm, silencing her. It is fine, he hissed. It is strategic. We can see the whole room from here. Sit down. They sat. It was a beautiful sight. My mother, who judged people by their zip code, sitting next to a swinging door that hit her chair every 30 seconds. LaToya, who lived for the aesthetic, trying to find an angle that did not include the bathroom sign. I stood over them, savoring the moment. Enjoy your evening, I said. The auction starts in 20 minutes. Do not be late. I turned to leave, but Brad caught my wrist. He pulled me down close to his face, his breath smelling of stale mints and anxiety. You did good, kid, he whispered, his voice low and conspiratorial. I knew you would come through. You keep Marcus happy. Keep him looking at you. He patted his jacket pocket where I knew the fake Hermes bag was waiting. Wait until I sell this bag, he murmured, a greedy glint in his eye. I'm going to make 50 grand tonight, easy. Once the wire clears, I will give you $500. Buy yourself something nice. Maybe a new sewing kit for your little hobby. He winked. I stared at him. $500. He was going to defraud a charity, ruin his wife's reputation, and steal my mother's house, and he thought $500 was a generous tip for my silence. I looked at his hand on my arm, then I looked at his face. You are too generous, Brad, I said, my voice soft. I pulled my arm away. Good luck with the sale, I said. I have a feeling you are going to need it. I walked away, my heels clicking on the parquet floor, leaving them in the shadows of the kitchen. I made my way to the front of the room, to the stage where the lights were brightest. Marcus was waiting for me. He saw my face. He saw the cold fire in my eyes. Are they seated? He asked. They are seated, I said. And Brad, Marcus asked. He offered me $500, I said. From the profits. Marcus laughed, but his eyes were deadly. Expensive mistake, he said. I took my place at the side of the stage, adjusting my headset. I looked out at the sea of faces. Way in the back, I could see 3 small figures arguing over a breadbasket. $500. I touched the small knife hidden in the folds of my dress. Brad thought he was paying me off. He did not realize he had just bought a front-row ticket to his own funeral. Let the bidding begin. The spotlight hit the center of the stage with a blinding white intensity that made the crystal chandeliers above look dim by comparison. The room fell silent, the kind of heavy, expensive silence that only exists when millions of dollars are about to change hands. I stood in the wings, my red dress rustling softly like dry leaves, my hand resting on the cool metal of the microphone pack clipped to my hip. From my vantage point, I could see everything. I could see the hungry eyes of the collectors in the front row. I could see Marcus sitting calmly at his table watching me with that dark, unreadable gaze. And way in the back, I could see my family huddled at their table by the kitchen doors, looking like vultures waiting for a carcass. And then the auctioneer spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, for our next lot, we have something truly special. A donation from the private collection of Mr. William Bradley of Apex Capital. A vintage Hermes Kelly 28 in black box leather with gold hardware. A timeless piece for a timeless cause. The doors opened, and my sister Latoya walked out. She had clearly spent the last 20 minutes in the bathroom trying to fix her appearance. She had piled her hair up in a messy bun that was meant to look chic, but just looked frantic. She was holding the orange box in front of her like a holy relic. She walked to the center of the stage, her hips swaying in an exaggerated rhythm that might have worked in an Atlanta club, but looked cheap and desperate here in the hallowed halls of the Palais Garnier. She reached the podium and smiled. It was her influencer smile, wide and bright and completely empty. "Hi everyone," Latoya chirped into the microphone. Her voice was too high, nervous energy radiating off her in waves. "I am so honored to be here. My husband Brad and I believe so strongly in giving back. We are blessed, truly blessed, and we just want to help those less fortunate." I felt a surge of bile in my throat. Less fortunate. She was talking about stealing money meant for charity to pay off her husband's gambling debts and hard money loans. She was standing there in a dress I paid for, holding a fake bag Brad bought on a street corner, talking about blessings. "This bag," Latoya continued, caressing the leather with a manic tenderness, "has been in our family for years. It is so special to me. But I know that selling it will help so many children. So please bid high. It is for the kids. For the kids." It was the perfect lie. The auctioneer stepped up. "We shall start the bidding at $10,000. 10,000 a paddle," went up in the third row. 15,000 another paddle. I watched Brad in the back of the room. He was practically vibrating. He was gripping the edge of the table, his knuckles white. He was doing the math in his head. 10,000 covered the interest on the loan. 15,000 covered the flight home. 20,000, the auctioneer called out. "Do I hear 25? 25 from the gentleman in the tuxedo." The price was climbing fast. This was a room full of people who spent $20,000 on wine. A vintage Kelly bag was a steal at this price. They did not know it was made of plastic and lies. They trusted the venue. They trusted the event. 30,000. 35. Latoya was beaming. She looked out at the crowd, her eyes shining. She thought she had made it. She thought she was one of them now. She looked back at Brad and gave him a tiny thumbs up. $40,000 to the lady in the front. 45,000. $50,000. The room buzzed. $50,000. That was the magic number. That was enough to save the brownstone for another month. That was enough to keep Brad out of jail for a few more weeks. Going once, the auctioneer chanted, his gavel raised high. Going twice. Brad was standing up now. He was grinning. He looked like he wanted to scream with joy. My mother was clapping her hands together, her face twisted in a rictus of greedy delight. "Sold to the stop." My voice rang out through the hall, amplified by the sound system. It was not a scream. It was a command. Clear. Authoritative. Cold. The auctioneer froze, his gavel hovering in midair. The entire room turned. 500 heads swiveled toward the side of the stage. I stepped out of the shadows. The spotlight caught me. The red silk of my dress blazed under the lights. I walked to the center of the stage, my movements slow and deliberate. I did not look at the audience. I looked straight at Latoya. Her smile vanished. Her eyes went wide. She took a step back, clutching the bag to her chest as if I were a physical threat. "Who are you?" the auctioneer sputtered, looking confused. "Madam, you cannot interrupt the I am Tiana Williams," I said, my voice booming through the speakers. "I am the chief authenticator for this gala appointed by the Board of Trustees, and I am exercising my right to halt this sale." A murmur ran through the crowd. Authenticator. Halt the sale. Those were dangerous words in this room. LaToya hissed at me away from the mic. "Tiana, what are you doing? Get off the stage. You are ruining everything." I ignored her. I turned to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice smooth and professional, "we take the integrity of this auction very seriously. Every item sold here represents a promise of quality, a promise of history, and a promise of truth." I pointed a finger at the black bag in LaToya's arms. "However, I have reason to believe that this item has not been properly vetted. As the chief authenticator, I require an immediate physical inspection before this transaction can be finalized." The buyer, who had bid $50,000, stood up looking concerned. "Is there a problem with the bag?" he asked. "That is what I intend to find out," I said. LaToya backed away further. "No," she shouted, her voice shrill and panicked. "There is nothing wrong with it. It is real. My husband bought it. It is vintage. She is lying. She is just trying to embarrass me." She looked out into the darkness, searching for Brad. "Brad, do something." In the back of the room, chaos erupted. My mother Beatrice stood up. She did not just stand, she exploded upward, knocking her chair over with a loud crash. She marched toward the stage, her face purple with rage. She did not care about the billionaires. She did not care about the gala. She only cared that I was ruining her payday. "She is lying!" Beatrice screamed, her voice carrying over the murmuring crowd. "Do not listen to her. She is my daughter and she is a failure." Security guards moved to stop her, but she dodged them, fueled by the adrenaline of pure greed. She ran down the center aisle, waving her arms like a madwoman. "She is jealous!" she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. She has always been jealous of her sister. LaToya is successful. LaToya is beautiful. Tiana is nothing. She fixes trash for a living. She is trying to sabotage us because she is miserable. The crowd gasped. This was not just a business dispute anymore. This was a family meltdown happening on the most exclusive stage in Paris. Beatrice reached the edge of the stage. She looked up at me, her eyes bulging. "Get off that stage, Tiana," she yelled. "Get down here right now. You are embarrassing the family. You are jealous because you do not have a husband. You do not have a life. You want what your sister has." I looked down at her. I looked at the woman who had birthed me. The woman who had left me at an airport with $200. The woman who was currently defending the man who stole her house. I did not feel anger anymore. I felt a cold, surgical precision. "Jealous?" I asked into the microphone, my voice calm. "You think I am jealous, Mother?" "Yes," Beatrice screamed. "You are jealous because LaToya is holding a $50,000 bag and you are holding nothing." I smiled. It was a sad smile. "I am holding the truth, Mother," I said. "And that is worth more than anything you have ever owned." I turned back to LaToya. She was shaking now, hugging the bag like a life preserver. "Give me the bag, LaToya," I said, holding out my hand. "No," she whimpered. "Brad said it is real. He said it is an investment. If it is real, you have nothing to fear," I said. "If it is real, I will inspect it, I will verify it, and I will let you sell it. I will apologize to the whole room." I took a step closer. "But if it is fake, LaToya, if your husband lied to you, if he sent you up here to commit a felony in front of the richest people in Europe, then you need to know." I saw the doubt flicker in her eyes. She looked at the bag. She looked at Brad, who was currently trying to push his way through the crowd toward the exit, but was blocked by Marcus' security team. She looked back at me. "It has to be real," she whispered, tears leaking from her eyes. "It has to be. We need the money, Tiana. We really need the money." Then let me prove it, I said. Slowly, reluctantly, she held the bag out. Her hands were trembling so hard the gold hardware jingled softly. I took the bag. It felt light in my hands. Cheap. I could smell the chemical glue even from here. I walked to the podium. I set the bag down under the bright inspection light. The audience held its breath. My mother stopped screaming, waiting to see what I would do. I reached into the small hidden pocket of my red dress. I pulled out my leather knife. The blade glinted in the spotlight. It was small, curved, and incredibly sharp. A gasp went through the room. "What is she doing?" someone whispered. I looked at Brad, who had stopped struggling near the door. He was staring at the knife. He knew. He knew exactly what was about to happen. I looked at Marcus. He nodded once. Execute. I looked at the camera broadcasting the feed to the giant screens on either side of the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice ringing out like a bell. "A true Hermes bag is made of the finest leather in the world. It is stitched by hand. It is built to last forever. Inside it has a soul." I raised the knife. "But this," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "this has no soul." And with one swift, violent motion, I plunged the knife into the front of the bag. The sound of the blade tearing through the black leather was louder than a gunshot in a library. It was a visceral ripping noise that echoed off the gilded ceiling of the Palais Garnier. For a heartbeat, nobody breathed. The entire room was suspended in a state of absolute shock. The wealthy elite of Paris stared at the stage, their mouths hanging open, their champagne glasses forgotten in their hands. They had come to see a charity auction. Instead, they were witnessing a murder. Then my mother screamed. It was a high, piercing shriek that sounded like an animal caught in a steel trap. "You crazy bitch," Beatrice yelled, lunging forward only to be restrained by the security team. "You ruined it. You ruined the bag. That was $50,000. You just destroyed $50,000. I did not look at her. I did not look at the horrified auctioneer who was clutching his gavel like a weapon. I looked at the bag. With calm surgical precision, I inserted my fingers into the gash I had just created. I gripped the edges of the leather and pulled. Real box calf leather fights back. It is tough. It is fibrous. It holds its shape because it was once a living thing. This leather peeled away like the skin of a cheap orange. I reached inside the layers of the bag. I pulled out the structural lining. In a genuine Kelly bag, this layer would be made of high-quality canvas or even thin layers of cork to maintain the shape while allowing the leather to breathe. I ripped a chunk of the lining out and held it up to the light. It was gray. It was stiff. It was cardboard. "Do you see this?" I asked. My voice amplified by the microphone, steady and cold. "This is recycled pressed cardboard. The kind used in shipping boxes." I tossed the piece of cardboard onto the stage. It landed with a pathetic flutter. I reached back into the bag. I scraped my fingernail against the inner wall. A flake of the black material came off under my nail. "And this," I said, holding my hand up to the camera that was broadcasting my every move to the giant screens. "This is not leather. This is pleather. A synthetic polymer spray painted to look like hide. It melts under heat. It cracks under pressure. And it smells." I brought the ruined bag up to the microphone. I squeezed it, pumping the air from inside the layers out into the room. "Smell it," I commanded. The people in the front row recoiled. The scent was unmistakable now that the seal was broken. It did not smell like earthy tannins or expensive oils. It smelled sharp and acrid. It smelled like gasoline and industrial glue. "That is the smell of a factory in Guangzhou," I said. "That is the smell of toxic adhesive used to bond plastic to paper. A real Hermes bag smells like history. This bag smells like a lie." Latoya was standing 5 feet away from me. She was trembling so violently that her teeth were chattering. She looked at the shredded bag in my hands, then she looked at me. Her eyes were filled with a terrifying realization. She had carried that bag around Paris for 2 days. She had posed with it. She had posted it on Instagram. She had built her entire self-worth around that orange box. And I had just cut it open and showed her that she was holding trash. "It cannot be," she whispered. Brad said. "He promised." Brad lied. I said simply, "I was not done." The autopsy was not complete. I placed the mangled bag back on the podium. I picked up the knife again. The audience flinched, but I did not slash this time. I used the tip of the blade to pry up the metal plate on the front strap, the one engraved with the logo. In a real bag, the hardware is solid brass plated in gold or palladium. It is heavy. It is pinned through the leather with rivets that go all the way through. I popped the plate off. It came away with a snap. It was held on by 4 tiny dabs of superglue. I held the metal plate up. I bent it between my thumb and forefinger. It warped easily. "Pot metal," I announced, tossing it onto the floor where it clattered like a toy. "Cheap zinc alloy. Gold paint. Value $3. The auctioneer looked like he was going to be sick. The buyer, who had bid $50,000, was wiping sweat from his forehead, looking at me with an expression of profound gratitude. I had just saved him a fortune and a lifetime of embarrassment. But I had one final piece of evidence: the smoking gun. "Every Hermes bag has a stamp," I said, addressing the camera directly. "A code that tells you the year it was made, the artisan who made it, and the workshop it came from. It is the bag's DNA." I spread the leather strap open, searching for the blind stamp hidden on the reverse side. I found it. I leaned into the microphone. "Brad told you this was a vintage piece," I said. "He told you it has been in the family for years." I read the code out loud. U.559. A murmur went through the room. The collectors knew. The experts knew. "The letter U corresponds to the year 2022, I explained. "This bag is less than a year old, so much for vintage." "But the numbers, 559, that is the interesting part." I looked directly at Brad, who was frozen near the exit door, his face a mask of sheer terror. "559 is not a workshop code," I said. "It is a seizure code." Last year, French customs seized a shipping container filled with 2,000 high-grade counterfeit bags entering Marseille. They catalogued them. They marked them for destruction. I paused, letting the silence stretch until it was almost painful. "This serial number belongs to a batch of counterfeits that were supposed to be incinerated. Somehow they made their way out the back door and onto the black market. And then they made their way into the hands of Mr. William Bradley." I looked at LaToya. "Your husband did not buy you a family heirloom," I said. "He bought you a piece of criminal evidence that was pulled out of a dumpster." The crowd erupted. It was not polite applause this time. It was a roar of shock and indignation. People were standing up, pointing at Brad. Voices were raised in French and English, demanding explanations, demanding security. I looked at the bag one last time. It lay on the podium, slashed open, its cardboard guts spilling out. It looked pathetic. "The starting bid was $10,000, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "The final bid was $50,000. I picked up the ruined carcass of the bag and held it out to my sister. "Current value," I said, cold and final. "0. LaToya stared at the bag. She looked at the cardboard lining. She looked at the glue. And then her eyes rolled back in her head. It was a theatrical faint, the kind she had practiced in high school drama club, but her legs gave out for real. She crumpled to the floor in a heap of cheap tulle and broken dreams. "LaToya," my mother screamed, rushing up the stairs not to help her daughter, but to escape the judgmental eyes of the crowd. She fell to her knees beside LaToya, shaking her. "Wake up! Wake up, you stupid girl! Fix this! Tell them Tiana is lying." But LaToya did not wake up. She lay there playing dead, because it was easier than facing the reality that her husband was a fraud and her sister was the executioner. I looked toward the back of the room. Brad had seen enough. He turned and bolted. He shoved a waiter aside, sending a tray of champagne crashing to the floor. He scrambled for the exit door, his tuxedo jacket flapping open, his dignity gone. He did not make it far. Elias Marcus, massive head of security, stepped out from behind a curtain. He did not run. He did not shout. He simply extended one arm like a toll gate. Brad ran straight into him. It was like watching a bird fly into a window. Brad bounced off Elias' chest and fell backward onto the floor, his legs tangling in the velvet ropes. "Going somewhere," Mr. Bradley Marcus' voice boomed from his table near the stage. Marcus stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked every inch the billionaire king who had just watched his queen checkmate the court jester. Brad scrambled backward on the floor, Crab walking away from Elias. "Let me go," he shouted. "I did not know. I was scammed, too. I bought it from a dealer. I am the victim here." "You are not a victim," Marcus said, walking toward him. "You are a liability." I stood on the stage alone. The spotlight was still on me. I looked at the ruined bag. I looked at my mother sobbing over my sister, not out of concern, but out of humiliation. I looked at Brad cowering on the floor. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. The shame I had carried for years, the feeling of being less than, of being the disappointment, it was gone. It had evaporated under the heat of the stage lights. I had done it. I had used my skill, my passion, the thing they mocked me for, to strip them bare. I turned to the auctioneer, who was looking at me with a mixture of fear and awe. "I believe this lot is withdrawn," I said. Then I walked down the stairs. The crowd parted for me. They did not look at me like a curiosity anymore. They looked at me with respect. I was not the girl who fixed old things. I was the woman who revealed the truth. I walked to Marcus. He offered me his arm. "Shall we?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. I pulled the phone from my pocket. The recording, the one from the bathroom, the one where Brad admitted everything. The speakers were still on. The system was still live. I connected my phone to the AV console near the stage. "I think the audience deserves an encore," I said. I pressed play. The silence in the Palais Garnier was electric, a living, breathing thing that pulsed with the collective shock of 500 wealthy socialites. Brad scrambled to his feet, his face a mask of primal fury. The veneer of the successful businessman had completely cracked, leaving behind the desperate cornered criminal underneath. He looked at the ruined bag on the stage, then he looked at me, and his eyes went black. "Give me the phone," he screamed. His voice cracked, echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "Give it to me, you little witch!" He lunged. He did not run like a man, he charged like a bullhead down, hands reaching for my throat. He scrambled up the stairs to the stage, his movements jerky and uncoordinated, fueled by pure adrenaline and terror. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that sucked the air out of the room. I did not move. I did not flinch. I stood my ground, my hand hovering over the play button on the AV console, because I knew something Brad did not. I was not alone. Before Brad could even reach the top step, a shadow moved across the stage. Elias did not tackle him. That would have been too messy, too undignified for a royal gala. Instead, he stepped into Brad's path with the immobility of a granite wall. He caught Brad's outstretched arm, twisted it behind his back with a sickening pop, and forced him down. Brad's knees hit the stage floor with a bone-jarring thud. He let out a yelp of pain, his face pressed against the polished wood by Elias' massive hand. "Stay down," Elias rumbled, his voice low and bored, "or I will break the other one." The room erupted into whispers. Phones were raised, capturing every second of the takedown. This was better than the opera. This was justice. I looked down at Brad. He was panting, spitting on the floor, trying to look up at me. "You cannot do this," he hissed. "That is illegal recording. It is inadmissible." I leaned into the microphone. "We are not in a court of law, Brad," I said, my voice cool and steady. "We are in the court of public opinion, and here the only rules are the ones you break." I looked out at the audience. I found my mother. Beatrice was standing near the front now, having rushed forward when LaToya fainted. She was staring at Brad with a look of confusion. She still did not understand. She still thought this was a misunderstanding, a mistake. She looked at me pleadingly, mouthing the word "stop." She wanted me to protect the family. She wanted me to cover up the mess just like I always did. She wanted me to fix the bag, fix the reputation, fix the lies. I looked at her. I remembered the airport. I remembered the slap. I remembered the years of being told I was not good enough. I turned back to the console. "You called us stupid, Brad," I said into the mic. "You called my mother a greedy old woman. You said you owned us." I pressed the button. The audio system at the Palais Garnier was designed to carry the delicate notes of a soprano to the furthest balcony. It was state-of-the-art. When Brad's voice boomed out of the speakers, it was crystal clear, loud enough to shake the dust off the chandeliers. The recording started with the sound of a door closing and the echo of the service corridor. "Listen to me, you little trash picker." The audience flinched. The venom in his voice was palpable. "You are going to go back in there, and you are going to tell Marcus that my fund is solid. You are going to tell him that I am a genius." Brad on the floor squeezed his eyes shut. He started moaning a low sound of despair. "No, no, no, turn it off." I did not turn it off. I turned the volume up. I borrowed $400,000 against the brownstone. The payments are due. If I do not wire that money, they take the house. Immediately. Your mother, your sister, all her tacky furniture out on the curb by sunset. Beatrice let out a sound that was not quite a scream and not quite a sob. It was the sound of a heart breaking. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself, her face turning the color of ash. But the recording was not done. The worst was yet to come. I had edited the file on the fly, cutting straight to the part that would bury him. "She is a greedy old woman who wanted a shortcut to being rich. Do not put this on me." She signed the papers. The crowd turned to look at Beatrice. She was swaying on her feet. Her friends, the women she tried so hard to impress, were looking at her with pity and disgust. The queen of the church ladies, the woman who judged everyone, was revealed to be a fool who had gambled her home on a con artist. And then came the line that would end him. The line he had whispered with such arrogance, thinking he was untouchable. "These stupid black people are so easy to trick." The gasps in the room were audible. The racial slur hung in the air, heavy and ugly. "That old woman believes everything I say. I sold her house last week, and she still calls me her precious son-in-law. I own her, Tiana. I own all of you." The recording ended with the sound of his footsteps walking away, arrogant and assured. Silence. Absolute, devastating silence. It was broken by a single sound. Beatrice fell. She did not faint like LaToya gracefully sinking into a pile of tulle. She collapsed. Her legs simply stopped working. She hit the floor hard, her knees striking the marble. She did not try to get up. She sat there in her expensive gown, surrounded by the wreckage of her pride, staring at the man she had chosen over her own daughter. Her house was gone. Her money was gone. Her reputation was incinerated. She had spent her life chasing status, chasing whiteness, chasing approval, and the man who embodied all of that for her had just called her stupid and sold her out. She looked up at the stage. She did not look at Brad. She looked at me. Her eyes were wide and terrified. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother look at me not with contempt, but with recognition. She realized in that moment that I was the only one who had tried to warn her. I was the only one who saw the truth. And she had slapped me for it. Brad on the floor started laughing. It was a manic, broken sound. "It is a deep fake," he shouted, his face pressed into the wood. "It is AI. She made it up. She is a computer genius, remember? She faked it." Marcus stood up from his table. He walked over to where Beatrice was sitting on the floor. He did not offer her a hand. He did not offer her comfort. He looked down at her with the impartial judgment of a god. "Mrs. Williams," he said, his voice carrying in the quiet room. "My team verified the foreclosure notice this morning. The hard money lender in Queens filed the paperwork yesterday. Your brownstone is scheduled for auction next Tuesday. Brad did not just leverage it. He defaulted on it 3 months ago. He has been intercepting the notices." Beatrice made a small whimpering sound. She covered her mouth with her hand, rocking back and forth. "He stole it," she whispered. "He stole my house. He stole your future," Marcus corrected. "And you handed him the pen." Latoya was awake now. She had pulled herself up to a sitting position, her makeup smeared her eyes wild. She looked at Brad, then at her mother, then at the empty spot on her arm where the fake bag used to be. "You sold the house," she shrieked at Brad. "You told me we were rich. You told me we were buying a villa. I was going to fix it," Brad yelled back, struggling against Elias' grip. "I was going to flip the necklace. I just needed time. You spend too much, Latoya. You bleed me dry. I had to do it." Police sirens began to wail in the distance, getting closer. The security team at the door was already waving the gendarmerie inside. I walked to the edge of the stage. I looked down at my family. They were a tableau of ruin. Beatrice broken on the floor. Latoya sobbing into her hands. Brad pinned like an insect. I felt a hand on my back. Marcus was beside me. "Are you done?" he asked softly. I looked at them. I looked at the people who had made me feel small for 29 years. They looked so small now, so pathetic. "I am done," I said. I stepped away from the microphone. I did not say another word to them. There was nothing left to say. The truth had screamed louder than I ever could. 2 French police officers marched down the aisle. They were not smiling. They walked straight to the stage. Elias hauled Brad to his feet. "Monsieur William Bradley," the officer said. "Or is it Simon Miller? Or David Scott? We have an Interpol warrant for your arrest regarding wire fraud in 3 countries." Brad started to cry. Real ugly tears. "Beatrice," he sobbed. "Beatrice, tell them. Tell them I am a good man. Help me." Beatrice did not look at him. She was staring at the floor, at the invisible ruins of her life. She did not say a word. The officers handcuffed Brad. The click of the steel was the final period at the end of his sentence. They dragged him away, kicking and screaming, his tuxedo bunched up around his waist, his shoes scraping across the floor. Latoya crawled over to her mother. "Mom," she wailed. "Mom, what are we going to do? Where are we going to stay? They kicked us out of the hotel. We have no money, Mom." Beatrice looked up. Her eyes found mine standing on the stage, bathed in light. "Tiana," she croaked. "Tiana, please. We have nowhere to go. Help us." I looked at her. I saw the woman who had handed me $200 and walked away. I saw the woman who had called me a burden. I reached into my clutch. I pulled out a single crisp banknote. $200. I crumpled it into a ball and tossed it off the stage. It fluttered down, landing near her knees. "Figure it out," I said, my voice echoing the words she had said to me at JFK. "You are a grown woman, Mother. Stop acting like a charity case. It is embarrassing." I turned my back on them. I took Marcus' arm. "Take me home," I said. "Not yet." Marcus said, his voice low. "We have one more stop." He led me off the stage, away from the wreckage of my family, away from the applause that was starting to ripple through the room again, a standing ovation for the woman who had burned down the house of lies. We walked toward the exit, leaving them on the floor, leaving them to the judgment of strangers, leaving them to the long, cold walk back to reality. I did not look back. I did not need to. I knew exactly what I would see, and for the first time in my life, I did not care. The flashing blue lights of the gendarmerie cars outside cast a strobe effect through the grand windows of the Palais Garnier, illuminating the wreckage of my family in harsh rhythmic bursts. The gala was over, but the drama was just reaching its crescendo. Brad was no longer the arrogant financier in a tuxedo. He was a weeping mess being dragged toward the exit by 2 stone-faced French officers. "It was her idea," Brad screamed, twisting his head back to look at my sister. His voice cracked with panic and betrayal. "She made me do it. She wanted the bag, she wanted the lifestyle, she bled me dry. I am innocent. It was Latoya. She knew everything." Latoya stood frozen, her mouth hanging open as she watched the man she had bragged about, the man she had allowed to belittle me, be dragged away like common trash. He was throwing her to the wolves to save his own skin. The fairy tale marriage, the power couple, image it all dissolved in that instant, leaving only the ugly truth of two grifters turning on each other. I watched them go. I felt Marcus's hand on my lower back, a steady warm weight grounding me in the chaos. "They are taking him to a holding cell," Marcus said, his voice low and satisfied. "The extradition treaty with the U.S. is quite efficient for financial crimes. He will be in a federal jumpsuit in New York by Tuesday." I looked down at my mother and sister. They were huddled together on the floor of the ballroom, looking like shipwreck survivors on a deserted island. The wealthy guests had cleared a wide circle around them, staring with a mixture of pity and disgust. Beatrice, the woman who had spent her life curating an image of perfection, was now the center of a scandal that would be talked about in Paris and New York for years. When she looked up and saw me standing there untouchable in my red dress, her expression shifted. The rage was gone, replaced by a terrifying desperation. She scrambled to her feet, pulling LaToya up with her. They stumbled toward me, their heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. "Tiana, baby, listen to me." Beatrice gasped, reaching out to grab my hands. I pulled back, crossing my arms over my chest. "Do not touch me," I said, my voice ice cold. "Tiana, please, you have to help us." Beatrice pleaded, tears streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. "You heard him. He lied to us too. Brad tricked us. We are victims just like you. We need to get home. We need to save the house." LaToya nodded frantically, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Tiana, he stole everything. We have nothing. The hotel kicked us out. Our cards are frozen. You are with Marcus now. You have money. You have to help family. Family." I repeated the word, tasting like ash in my mouth. "You left me at an airport with no money and no passport. You told the world I was a failure. You tried to steal my inheritance. And now you want me to save you because we are family." Beatrice fell to her knees. It was a shocking sight. The proud, haughty woman who had slapped me just 24 hours ago was now kneeling at my feet, grasping at the hem of my dress. "I am begging you," she sobbed. "The house, the brownstone, it is all we have left. If Brad defaulted, they will take it next week. My father worked his whole life for that house. You cannot let them take it." I looked at Marcus. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He handed it to me without a word. I opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of legal documents. On top was the deed to the brownstone in Brooklyn. Beatrice's eyes widened. She recognized the paper. She recognized the seal of the lender. "You bought it," she whispered, hope blooming in her face. "Oh, thank God. Marcus bought the debt." "Tiana, you saved us. I knew you would. I knew you loved me." I looked at the deed. It represented 3 generations of my family history. It represented the roof over my head growing up, but it also represented the collateral my mother had used to finance her vanity, the leverage Brad had used to blackmail me. "Marcus did not buy this for you, Mother," I said, holding the paper up to the light. "He bought it for me. He paid off the hard money lender this morning while you were getting your hair done for the gala." Beatrice reached for the paper, her hands shaking. "Thank you, Tiana. Thank you. We will pay you back, I promise. Just give it to me so we can go home." I looked at her grasping hands. I thought about the $200 she had thrown at me. I thought about the way she had looked at me with disgust when she thought I was poor. "I am not giving this to you," I said. Beatrice froze. "What?" "I am not giving you the house," I said clearly. I gripped the top of the document. The paper was thick and expensive. "I sold it," I said. Beatrice screamed. "No, you cannot." "Ooh, it is my house." "It was your house," I corrected, "until you signed it away to a con artist. Now it is an asset, and I have already liquidated it." I ripped the deed in half. The sound was sharp and final, Beatrice lunged, but Elias stepped in front of me, blocking her path. I tore the papers again and again until they were just confetti in my hands. I let the pieces fall to the floor, drifting down like snow over my mother's kneeling form. I sold the property to a developer this afternoon, I said, my voice steady. The closing is next week. You have 7 days to vacate the premises. Whatever is left inside goes into a dumpster. Where is the money? Latoya shrieked. You got millions for that house. Give us the money. That is our inheritance. I smiled. It was the smile of someone who had burned the bridge and was enjoying the warmth of the fire. I donated it, I said. Every single penny. Beatrice looked like she was having a stroke. You did what? I donated the proceeds to the Foster Care Alliance, I said, specifically to a fund that helps teenagers who have been abandoned by their parents. I thought it was poetic. The house you gambled away will now help children who actually know what it feels like to have nothing. You are evil, Beatrice whispered, staring at the torn paper on the floor. You are a monster. I am the daughter you made, I said. I learned from the best. I turned to Marcus. I am ready to go. He nodded, offering me his arm. Wait, Latoya cried, grabbing at the air as we walked away. Tiana, how are we supposed to get home? We have no tickets. We have no place to stay. I stopped and looked back over my shoulder. Uber is cheap this time of night, I said, repeating Brad's words from the airport. Or you can walk. It is good exercise for people who need to learn how to stand on their own 2 feet. We walked out of the ballroom, leaving them kneeling in the debris of their own lives. We walked through the lobby, past the staring guests, past the concierge, who bowed low as we passed. Outside, the air was crisp and clean. The Rolls-Royce was waiting. The driver held the door open. To the airport, Marcus said. We settled into the leather seats as the car glided through the streets of Paris. The city of lights blurred past the windows, but I did not look back. You did well, Tiana, Marcus said, taking my hand. How do you feel? I took a deep breath. I checked my chest for the heavy weight of guilt I had carried for years, the desperate need for their approval. It was gone. In its place was a vast open space filled with possibility. I feel expensive, I said. Marcus laughed, a rich, warm sound. You are expensive, he said, and you are worth every penny. We are going to Milan next. I have a client there who has a collection of vintage trunks that needs your eye. And after that, Tokyo. I leaned my head on his shoulder. It sounds perfect, I said. The car pulled up to the private terminal at Le Bourget. The Gulfstream was waiting, its engines humming, ready to take us anywhere we wanted to go. We boarded the plane hand in hand. As we taxied down the runway, I looked out the window one last time. I imagined my mother and sister. They had been kicked out of the Ritz by now. They were probably sitting on their Louis Vuitton luggage on the curb, their phones dead, their credit cards declined. They would have to call the embassy. They would have to beg. They would have to sleep in the airport on hard plastic chairs, eating vending machine sandwiches, just like they had forced me to do. The plane accelerated, pressing me back into the seat. We lifted off, climbing higher and higher, leaving the ground far below. I ordered a glass of champagne. To family, I said, raising the glass to the empty seat opposite me, where the ghost of my old self used to sit. Marcus clinked his glass against mine. To freedom, he corrected. I took a sip. Huh? It tasted like victory. The plane banked, turning south toward Italy, toward the future. Below us, Paris was just a cluster of lights fading into the distance. They were down there in the dark. I was up here in the stars. And for the first time in 29 years, I knew exactly where I belonged. Tiana's journey reveals a powerful truth. Your value is never defined by those who refuse to see it. For years, she allowed her family to treat her unique skill as a failure simply because it didn't fit their superficial standards of success. By finally embracing her talent as an authenticator, she not only exposed their fraud but reclaimed her dignity. This story reminds us that family is earned through respect, not entitlement. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop seeking validation from empty wells and realize that your authentic self is the most expensive asset you own. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you've ever found strength in walking away.